Hi, it's Ursula from EasyScraps.com, and today I'm going to give a mini lesson on how you can use one of our digital downloads with Photoshop. I have open in Photoshop a file from our digital download site of EasyScraps.com, and this particular file comes with 4 different card fronts in a single 8.5 by 11 file. If I wanted to, I could bring this into Photoshop and just print it as is. And this will print as an 8.5 by 11 on a good inkjet printer, something that will print like good photographs. They typically run in and around 300 pixels per inch, which is the resolution of this digital download file. So I could bring this into Photoshop and print it as is, and then I could cut it down, cut down the printed image, layer things on top of it, put it on a greeting card size card, and I'd be done. And so that's a very easy way of using our digital downloads. But I wanted to show you today how you could take a single digital download image and just use a part of it. So I'm going to run through a sequence of steps that I do every time I work on a project so that I can preserve my original image. So I have my original image opened in Photoshop. I'm going to select all, edit, copy, and that's going to copy everything on this in this file, on this layer, to the clipboard. I'm going to close this file because I'm done with it now. And now I'm going to create a new file. And I've already saved a preset in Photoshop that's set up to be 8.5 inches by 11 inches, 300 pixels per inch. So that's going to match my digital download resolution. And I have a background of transparent. You could actually choose a white or a different color, but I like to run with transparent. So I have a new file with a transparent background with nothing on it. If I come up here to edit, paste, it's going to paste the contents of my clipboard into my new file as a new layer. So now I basically have something that looks very similar to my original image, but I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file. And so I had already created a file of the same name, so that's why that little thing popped up. So I'm creating a new file that's separate from the original, so if I make any edits to this, I have preserved my original. And so I'm making changes to the copy, not the original. All right, so I now have a new Photoshop file. And because I saved it as a Photoshop file, if I create any new layers, those new layers will be preserved when I save. If I save as a JPEG or a TIFF or a PNG, any layers that I have in my file will basically be merged together into a single layer if I save in any of those other formats. But I saved as a Photoshop file so that I can preserve my layers. So I have one layer now that is all of the 4 card fronts in one. If I come up and use one of the selection tools, I'm going to choose the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to come down below and to the right of this upper left-hand card, and I'm going to drag the marquee tool. It's going to put basically a rectangular marquee selection box around that upper left-hand card front. Now if I do edit, copy, it's making a copy of that card front and saving it in the clipboard. If I click off the visibility, if I go over to this layer palette and click off the visibility of this original layer and now choose edit, paste, watch what happens. the contents of the clipboard, which is now just that single card front, is pasted as a new layer in my file. And so now I have just one card front. If I were to print this now, instead of having 4 different card fronts on a single 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, I'd have one card front and the rest would be just a blank sheet of paper, which is kind of wasteful. It's kind of wasting an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. If that's what I wanted to do, that's fine. But I've decided that I don't want to waste that sheet of paper. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. And in essence, I'm going to end up duplicating it 3 additional times. So I'm going to print this out, this single card front, 4 times. So if I come up, I'm on that new layer that I've created from the paste. And I'm going to say layer, duplicate layer. I could give it a new name if I wanted to. It's now created a second copy of that single card front layer. And now if I come over to the, but it's one on top of each other. Okay, so I've got one layer sitting on top of another layer and it's hiding whatever's underneath. If I come up to the Move tool, which is this little arrow at the top, I have Auto Select selected, and I click on an image in my Photoshop file. It's going to select the layer that I'm clicking on, and now I can use that Move tool to move it around. So it's clicking that second duplicate copy, and now I can move it over to the side of the original card front. So now I have a file with 2 card fronts that are the same. And if I printed now, I'd have a printed piece of paper that has 2 card fronts that are the same, and then this bottom part would be white, or the original color of the paper I'm printing on. So if I continue in this manner, I could do layer, duplicate layer, use my Move tool, auto select that new layer, that new duplicated layer, and move it. So now I have a third copy. Now I can take that third copy, duplicate that, use my Move tool, select, move it across. And so in this manner, I've now created 4 copies of just a portion of the original Easy Scraps digital download image. If I were to print this right now, I would get 4 of the same card fronts. And then I could cut them up and put them on a card and layer and edge them with gold or do whatever I wanted to. But it just adds some flexibility. So with digital downloads, you could use the original image as it is, or you could bring it into Photoshop and do things with it and get more out of your digital download. I always want to make sure at the end, or actually even as I go along, I want to make sure that I save my work. So I've now saved this file as a Photoshop file with 5 different layers, 4 of which are visible because I have the visibility icon turned on. And then my original layer where the visibility is turned off, but I left it there in case I ever want to go back to it. I hope you enjoyed this mini lesson, and I hope you join us next time for another lesson on using Photoshop with original artwork. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.